Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
Hi, my name is Adrienne, and I am thrilled and honored to welcome you to season 4 of the Black Women in Europe podcast. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been 4 years of telling our stories, shining our lights, and keeping it real. Do they even say that anymore? Anyway, we're glad you're here and keep coming back.
Welcome. I'm so excited to have a magnificent person with many titles and talents today for our season 4, season of healing broadcast. I have the fabulous love TaShia Asanti joining us from the West Coast of the United States. Sister, welcome.
So much. I'm so happy and excited to be here.
Well, you know what? I have admired you from afar for many reasons. But before we get into this, let's just do a little 60-second meditation.
Yes.
I'm at the winding down my day. You're at the beginning of your day.
Yes.
But we're just going to take a breath, inhale and exhale. Relax our shoulders. Our faces are soft and beautiful. I offer you just a short visualization that you're in your happy space, your nature space. What is that for you? Take yourself there. If you're in a warm spot, take your shoes off. Feel the earth underneath your feet. Maybe you're in a cool place, top of a mountain. Hear the snow crunching under your feet. Wherever you are in your special place, feel the temperature on your skin. Hear the sounds. Smell the beautiful smells that we find in nature. And now listen for the sounds coming from your own body. Maybe you can hear your breathing through your nostrils. Maybe you hear it in your throat. Maybe you're hungry and your stomach's grumbling or you're digesting your morning meal. Know that your body is working as it should in its divine perfection. Now maybe gently rub your hands to generate just a little heat. I'm going to take my glasses off, cup my hands over my eyes, absorb that warmth, and just slowly blink open, remove my hands. And we are back together in the room, sister, across the waves.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I have to be in my right mind to talk to you because you're going to have a lot of wonderful things to tell us. Now, I found you, I can't remember. This is just how I know how the universe works. I found you and we're drawn to you because of your publications, the offerings that you do, the healings, you do trips. You're a priestess, you're an author, you're a mother. You are an inspiration. I've seen the women's circles that you pull together and conversations that you've had with other women. You are a gift. Thank you. Let's start by talking about where did you come from? How did you get started? How did you tap into all that wonderfulness?
Well, first and foremost, dear sister Adrienne, I want to acknowledge your spirit and the way that you see us and call out to us and align us to be able to heal ourselves. And you take the time out of your heart to ensure that we're okay. And you do that in so many beautiful ways from your medicines. So I want to acknowledge that, because in the way that we truly connected was in you loving me as a warrior, as a healer. And so often the warriors and healers are not seen, their pain, their struggles, but that you from across the waters heard me and supported me. And even though we didn't get to take it to complete fulfillment, your love was so strong in even the reaching out that it helped me through a challenging time. So I just wanted to first and foremost acknowledge you and the beautiful work that you are doing.
Thank you,
You,
sister. Thank
yeah,
you. I didn't know that. And you know what? When you say we didn't follow it through, you know what? We're following it through. I know what you mean. We maybe didn't do what we thought we were going to do, but you know what? The universe knows what we're supposed to do and when. Are we supposed to be doing this right now? That's step one.
and I should probably correct it and say I didn't follow through because you followed through.
Look, with as many things as you have going on, that's okay. The seed was planted, and look what we're going to reap, what we're blooming. So thank you for that acknowledgement. Do you see people why I love her? Thank you for that acknowledgement.
Yes. You say where your question was, where did I come from?
Well,
Uh,
I just wonder, yes, because you sometimes to me it seems like you would just drop down out of like a with fairy dust around you and everything falling, but that's not how things work. You
oh, uh,
So tell us how that worked for you. Like how did you because it's an
it's
incredible journey.
oh my goodness. Well, I began my journey in Chicago, Illinois, in the USA, with my mother and my father. My father was a doctor and a minister, and my mother was a school teacher. And my father was also politically active. He was involved in the Black Panthers. And so I had all of these different mixtures of spirit and creativity. My mother's also an artist. She was a painter. She worked with watercolor. She also worked with textiles. She made jewelry. Those were her passions, her loves. Of course, she had to do what she had to do because she had a child, 3 children to take care of. But that's how it really started. And between those two, they cultivated a spirit in me that was a seeker and that was always seeking truths. And that was really how the journey began, because from age 7, I started writing poetry. I was surrounded by books because my mother was an English lit major and she didn't buy me a lot of toys. I had my little dolls, but she bought books and we read all the time in my household. And that was one of the best things that she could have ever given me, one of the best gifts she could have ever given me. And through that, I developed the knack and the drive to write. But she was my first ears and my first editor and all of that.
And I'm sure your biggest cheerleader. And I found, okay, another way we connected. My mother's from Chicago. I consider that my second home. Spent all my summers there with her father, who was a minister. Both of my grandfathers were ministers. Um, my mother was an educator, music educator, though, but I got my first degree in English. And talk about love of reading, house full of books. And I had an uncle who, when we would spend summer vacations, not in Chicago, but with him, his library was massive. But he would put different price tags on I shouldn't say price tags, but dollar amounts on the books. And the same thing for our chores. And we would try to do what we thought would be fast and easy because we'd have to read the book and then talk to him about the book, right? So instead of doing that, we're looking around, what can we do faster? And I look now, those books, it might be $20 to read a book and we're hustling for a $5 cut the lawn. What's the lesson in that, right? Feed
Right.
your mind, right?
Yes.
We were gonna have to do those chores anyway, because right, you're gonna have to do chores. But I think his library was massive. I could have spent the summer reading, earning money, having these discussions with my uncle, but I wasn't there yet. but I have that lesson and I remember that lesson. And I do have a love of books for the family. So I know my grandparents, my father took them to the March on Washington, but we don't have no Panthers in our family. Your father was a Panther, he was involved.
Yes. And I remember so vividly how he would like literally walk out of the pulpit, and he used to have this old 1960s Thunderbird with the tail lights that like a Batman movie, right? And we would
Yes.
get it, would put on his little tam, his black tam, and put it to the side. And I remember him wearing it with so much pride because he was strong. He was a warrior in his own way. Um, and he really believed in healing our community and the importance of that. And he felt that that was one of the ways that the community could get healed. And so the other thing that he did that stands out for me when you say, where do I come from, was that he knew that a lot of people of African descent did not have the resources to get proper medical care and preventative medical care. So he would take his black bag and we would go to what they called in Chicago at that time, the projects. And these were communities, huge apartment complexes. And though they were rich in spirit and creativity, as far as money, they were impoverished, severely impoverished. And he would go in there and he would do home visits and he would give them their medicine, their insulin. And I never saw them pay him anything. So maybe they did, maybe they later wrote him a check or gave him a love offering or something. But I remember we would spend our Sundays after church. That's what we did. And everywhere we went, people would feed me. That's probably where I got my eating disorder because there was peach cobbler, there was, all of the stuff.
Girl, I know it was good. I know it was good.
But it was beautiful and it was all love, the things that I experienced. So those are that type of service to humanity is where I come from. And my mother, teaching school in the inner city to young kids and bringing them arts. That was when they had arts programs. They defunded a lot of those programs in America.
Yeah, I told you my mother was a music educator. Yeah, arts in the schools. And when I
Right.
grew up in DC, I was in the city orchestra. I mean, it was part of the fundamentals, and that was a huge course mistake. We went off course as a nation when we stopped thinking that arts in the schools was as important as science and writing and mathematics. Oh, so there's a generation that has to get it a different way. I know there are programs that are bringing it back in, but so you develop the love of service. Must come second nature to you, service, because when you grow up in a family like that, it's like
Yeah,
second nature, isn't it? It's like breathing.
it really is. And they were just so, it was hard for me because I had such, to me, in my mind, I don't know, maybe they were just regular people, but to me, my mother and her sisters were so dynamic that I felt pressured as a young person, like you got to be something. So I really pursued, I had my first goal, I always laugh about this, was to be the first Black woman president of the United States. And I remember my mother, God rest her soul, and I know she meant well. She said, baby, you need to get another goal because there will never be a Black president of the United States.
I have something similar. My mother wanted to be a lawyer, and her father, my beloved grandfather, said, "Ain't no black women lawyers." And I'm thinking, I
Right,
she could have been Ketanji. She could have been on the bench before Ketanji, I think, because
right,
everybody thinks their mother's brilliant, but I know she was brilliant. She went on and got her PhD and other things. But you're right. To save us, to save us, they said that. It's not like they crushed our goals or didn't think we were
yeah,
smart enough to
yeah,
do it. But to save us, and you see what Katanji went through and her
right,
hearing.
right,
Imagine that, So they weren't wrong saying, but we know now that we can set these goals for our children and say, yes, you can do that.
right.
Um,
That's right.
but okay, so that's your background. That's how you grew up. When did you leave Chicago? And when did you start putting that in action out of your own initiatives? Because you were doing service following your parents, which is, they taught
Yeah,
you well. When did you
yes.
take what they taught you and said, this is what I have to do?
I would say probably about 16. Around 8 years old, we relocated to Southern California, to Los Angeles. And it was like a whole new experience because, as you know, there's snow and ice in Chicago, and it is no joke. So we moved to California, and that was a whole new path that opened up for me. And but around 16, I started getting active and I joined the Black Panthers like my dad. And it was very troubled at that time. It was a grassroots organization. So in some ways it lacked the organization, the organization and the structure, but they were also up against things that I didn't understand at that time. There was a systematic and, to take them down, to destroy them and to stop their work. And again, I didn't understand. I didn't have any concept of what they were really up against as an organization. So I was active for a while, but shortly thereafter, my aunt, God rest her soul, the baby sister, she got into politics. And that's how I got that, really said, I can do this, I can make it. But she started representing, she represented a US president, and she represented some of California's top political officials, from Tom Bradley to US Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who's of course still in office today, and Senator Nate Holden, many, many other luminaries. And I got to be part of the people who was canvassing the neighborhoods with their brochures. And that's how they did it in the old days. Now we have social media. But I learned so much from her about organizing. She actually taught me how to organize. And after that, I decided to leave politics because I felt like it just wasn't going to accomplish the serious things that, communities of color were up against. So I left mainstream politics and I became a grassroots activist. And I literally, like, for probably another 10 or 12 years, that was my whole life. And I became a journalist, and I used my platforms and my stories and my articles and, sessions I did on broadcast news to reach people and to educate people and to work with our allies, because I also learned painfully that just because people look like me don't mean that they are right. My friend, allies
No,
can
I'm
come.
shaking
Oh,
my head viciously. No, no. Okay, sister, something else we connected on. I'm a passionate overseas voter advocate. And so that's grassroots work. But in and they are still doing door knocking grassroots like you did in the day, because that's still the most effective way. Social media, yeah, but the old school way, like you were taught, like you did, that is still the most effective way. And because we're overseas and with an organization, we can't. Some communities are doing door knocking, I heard, but
oh,
we'll call people on the phone. We're the only ones that call, and they're like, "Wow, nobody calls to see if I'm voting." And we have a database to make sure people do it. We work with other states sometimes that that coordinate with us to do it. But grassroots, Sister Sandra, we have so much in common. But that's the way to do it. So, how did you become a journalist?
I started, wanting to educate people, and I kept thinking about, like, what is the most effective way and how can I reach the most people? And I wrote my first article for this newsletter back in the day, and it touched so many people. People were contacting me for years because they had read that story. And then I started working for this small mom and pop magazine. I mean, literally, we used to like fold it together and staple it, and people would order it all over the country. Like, we would put this little magazine out. And then I got my first big job for what they call a syndicated newspaper and or news magazine. And then kind of the advent of the internet really helped me because now not only were my stories in print, you could read them on the internet. And so I was reaching probably about 300,000 people every month with my editorial, and that opened up broadcast news. So now I started to be contacted by, major news networks like CNN and Fox News and all of those. And I started doing broadcast news interviews and various projects on television and radio. And it was just, I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I got to teach people, and was many like unsung heroes and sheroes who had never been written about. And I chose them to be my subjects because I wanted to bring visibility to their work. And because I think it's so important that we tell the stories that aren't being told. Like, these people were doing great work, but most of them would never be on a cover of Essence magazine or Ebony or something like that. So it was up to me. I told myself to make sure that their great work got the exposure that it deserved. So I went into doing that, and I went on to become an editor of a national newspaper, one of the top 10 Black newspapers in the country. I became editor of that. And there I founded this book series called Read Us. And then I started the Read Us Book Awards. And so I just try to do my work and lift the vibration and, make things better wherever I go. That's my mission. I'm not, I know there's no such thing as perfection, but I figure if we could just try to make every little space we go in a little better and bring more light, then I've done my job. If I leave it better than it was when I got there.
That's fantastic. That, I mean, syndicated, then national. You said CNN, Fox is crazy then as they are now.
They were crazy then. I did this show, this Black journalist, her name is Shaw Turner. She had this show called Fox Box. And I went on the first time and she said, "Oh my God, our ratings went through the roof when you came on, love." And so they ended up they started calling me back. And I ended up going on the show like maybe 10 times and what they didn't know is I was blasting it to my social media every time I went on there. And by now I had developed a pretty strong platform on social media. But to be on a show at that level also helped me a lot. And I got another gig. It was with the Rocky Mountain PBS. PBS, of course, is a national network, right? We know
Love
about PBS.
PBS. Yeah, I love PBS. Yeah.
And I got that gig, and that was really a lot of fun because they would couple you with people who had differing opinions, which made the conversation interesting. And we would kind of like spar back and forth, with each other. It was like a kind of like a talk show, but a panel. And we represented, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, people who were no party or whatever. And we would talk about the issues of the day. So I did that for close to 4 years, that show. So it was a lot of fun.
Wow. So did you have any media training before this? Or this is just a gift, a natural gift that you have?
Well, I left that part out, but I did go to school for journalism, and I decided to make that my major in school. And I got pregnant with my daughter while I was in college at age 19, and I kind of had to drop out because I had to feed this little kid, this little girl, and I didn't have the help of her father at that time. But I went back to college. I went to UCLA. I actually got a full scholarship after she was grown through this organization. They gave me what's called the SEED Scholarship, the International Black Writers and Artists. And I was able to go back to school. And that was one of the greatest blessings in my life because I met my tribe there at UCLA. And I was able to, learn a different side of my work. But I have to say, most of what I learned by reading because, what Florence taught me, my mommy, was, read it, look in the books. And she made me look up the proper ways to write. She was serious about her English. So she would look at my first articles and put red all over. He didn't play about the King's English. And so that probably really
But
gave me my,
yes, and I'm thinking it sets you up because editors are going to redline your stuff, scratch you, so it takes your
oh,
emotions and person. You don't feel defensive. Because I know when I edit, some people they're like, ah, really? And it's like, calm down, it's okay. This you gave me something to work with. It's great. But people can get defensive. So when your mom was your editor, okay, something else we have in common. My mom taught 2 summers at UCLA in the ethnomusicology department. The first time I went to that campus, we were 9 as a family. We drove cross country. Second time I was 16. And I just remember falling in love with California, LA. I wanted to go to UCLA, Westwood. First time I
right.
saw a convertible Volkswagen, I was like, that's the cutest thing in the world. Nobody was driving those in DC. It didn't seem, and it just blew my mind. Um, so wow, but the full scholarship, see, that's a blessing. And what a great example you were for your daughter to
Yes.
show that you're gonna finish what you started, and if you do good stuff, people help you,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
UCLA ain't cheap. You got a full ride 4 years.
You gotta have some money to go to UCLA. But there was two programs. There was a second program that I got in. They gave me this award for my work as a writer. This other organization, the Lambda Literary Association, and they made me what is called a fellow. And through them, I actually got to stay on campus for free in the dorms and eat, whatever I need to go to the cafeteria and all that. And that was to me where I really started to hone my skills as a book writer because, I got to be mentored by these incredible people like Catherine Forrest and other really best-selling authors. And I got to read, chapters of my novels and have them workshop it and get the input from my peers. And so it has just been, Spirit has really blessed me and guided me along the path. And, and not without some hard times because I went through a lot of challenges, to be able to survive all of that. Being a single mom and a teenage mom was tough, but, and I remember going through the welfare system because I was struggling and I was proud and I didn't want to ask my mom and my family for help. And so I remember going through that humiliation. And one of
And
the,
you say that, love. I don't want to cut you off, but it shouldn't be in
no,
humiliation. We have got to revamp the system where people feel like it's supposed to be like, don't we say provide for the general welfare in the preamble of our Constitution? And doesn't that mean feeding our kids and taking care of their mothers? And
I,
we hand out welfare and all this. I'm preaching to the choir in
yeah,
terms of subsidies to big companies, banks, bank loans, all kinds of stuff. But when the individual who is just trying to do right, they get you walk in there and they make you feel like, what are you doing here? It's like, well, what do you mean, what am I doing here? What are you doing here? Are you
it,
waiting for me to come in to help?
yes, it was horrible. It was so dehumanizing. And I remember one scene when I went to see my social worker and they didn't call us by name, they called us by number. And I wrote a poem about it and I gave it to them. And that poem ended up going in their newsletter and being posted up on the wall because in the poem I said, I'm not just a number. I'm not 67824. My name is, and I told them my government name, my birth name. And she said, you touched people so much because I just remember feeling so dehumanized that they weren't calling me by my name, but they were calling me by a number. And they changed that after that and started to call you Mrs. This or Mr. That in California.
Wow. Wow. That's huge right then and there. I had no idea that was part of almost like your prison number.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
crazy. Okay, wow. So you changed lives in so many ways, but you changed everybody's life that came after you in that system, that was in the system with you, that was working with that system. I shouldn't say in the system. We're all in the system, but
Yes.
working with you. Um, wow. Okay, so yeah, the struggles, but you still okay. How when it was the hardest for you then, how did you pull yourself together? Or how did you hold yourself up?
Definitely my family. was a key part of me being able to survive all of that. My mother, like you said earlier in our interview, she was my best friend. She was my cheerleader. But at one point, I did succumb to the pressure and to peer pressure, and I got involved with drugs and alcohol. And I was among the really, really fortunate people, because so many bad things can happen to a young woman who is out there, doing that kind of stuff. And I know the angels were watching out for me all the time. And so at age 23, though, I stopped using drugs, all drugs and alcohol. And I have never picked up since, one day at a time, 36 years of sobriety. And again, I could have died out there, because at that time, crack cocaine had just been dropped, as you know, the story that was being dropped in the Black community
I would say
as
dropped on us like snow, like
right.
rain. Yeah.
Yeah, as a
Wait a
way
minute,
to
but first of all, congratulations on 36 years. That's no small feat.
thank you.
Wow. That's
Yes,
incredible. Now,
thank you.
people, is it easy now, or do you still have to, are you still tempted sometimes, or because this is about healing, right? So you were
Yes,
able to do that. How did you just do that?
right. I was tired, and I knew that God had something, Spirit had something better for me. But I thank God for my uncle, also, who's crossed over. He's an ancestor, and my mother, because that one day my mother walked me to the mirror. Again, I was a young child. I was 23. And she showed me my prom picture and how beautiful I looked. And she said, "Now look at the woman in the mirror that you've become using these drugs." And I remember just breaking down crying, because it was like I didn't even look like me. And she said, "We're going to get you some help." And my uncle, who was running a huge construction company, he started taking me to meetings. And, we're anonymous, so I can't say what kind of meetings, because we have to be anonymous at levels of press, radio, and film. But he started taking me to meetings. And thank goodness it held on. But I was ready to surrender. I was tired. And I had only been doing it for 6 months. Remember, there's women out there who have been out there, they lose everything. They lose custody of their children. They lose everything. And but I had my daughter, and I really didn't want her to grow up with a mother who was an addict. That was really one of my inspirations. And I thank God, I got clean. I got clean and sober, and I stayed that way. And my daughter grew up around love and good people and healthy people. And I became that mom. Like, I was the PTA mom. I mean, I just did everything. And if it wasn't for that intervention, and I know that there may be women who listen to this podcast, or men who listen to this podcast, that may be struggling with addiction. So I'm sharing my story because I want you to know, healing is, you can get healed. You can get free of that. You have to be willing to do what the people tell you to do. And I had wonderful mentors, through those programs, who loved on me, who healed me, who helped me to love myself and know that I was valuable and sacred, and that I didn't deserve to kill myself using drugs one day at a time. And if not for myself, for my child at that time, I did it. And later, I did it for me. But in the beginning, I did it for Danielle, because I didn't want her to grow up with a mother like that. And she went on to run for the U.S. Senate. So
In California?
in Colorado.
In Colorado.
So I always say, the village that raised her, that healed me, look at what, because you see generational addiction in families sometimes. Like, if the mother is addicted or the father is addicted, the child will become an addict. Their child will become an addict. And when we break those cycles, and I know that's part of what this season of wellness is about on your show, is like, when we break those cycles of trauma in our family, we literally change generations. So that's
We can
important.
change. Yeah, and that's important. And wow, what powerful. I would have never known that was part of your past if you hadn't put it out there. I mean, you don't keep that a secret. But
Yeah.
for people, yeah, who think, oh, I can't, it's no difference, it's not going to matter, no one's going to miss me, or what difference is it going to make? I know what it can feel like to be low, 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 and to think. And you had Danielle. I think about my mother. You know, I have my family. What advice would you give for people who maybe who don't have a mother like we have, or
Mm.
had, or a daughter? And like you said, you did it for Danielle because you know what kind of childhood you wanted her to have and what kind of mother you wanted to be. What about people that don't have somebody that they don't think they're worthy enough to do it for themselves? Do you have any advice for people like that?
I do. There's a good friend of mine who I love so much, and she always says this, and I hold on to this. She says there's 9 billion people on the planet Earth. She said, if you don't have a family that loves you, if you don't have, siblings, she said, you can choose a family for yourself of loving, kind, caring people. And I love it. The young people call it chosen family. And today I have chosen family across the world. Like, I'm so blessed and fortunate to have cultivated all of these connections. And some of these people are really, some of them, I'm closer to them than members of my family. And they will save your life. They will tell you the truth. Because sometimes we need somebody to just tell us, our caca, it stinks or whatever. And so reach out to your village, reach out to resources of people who can help pour into you until you can pour into yourself. And, because you can change it. You don't have to stay wherever you are if you're struggling with anything, whether it's mental health, whether it's homelessness, any challenge that, can define our path or our life experience. You can change courses. And it only takes one step in the right direction. And I find once you take that first step, you can take that second and that third. Yes.
Mm. And I love that. 9 billion people. I want to add to that because I love that chosen family, but I want to add to that. Out of those 9 billion, there's only one you. You are unique, created in perfection, no matter what you're going through now. And if you stop being you or disappear, you're messing up the ecosystem. You know, this is a delicate balance. Everybody has something, some talent. It may not have been nurtured. People may have told you you didn't have it. It may not even has arisen in you yet. But every life is so valuable and so purposeful. So no matter where you are, no matter how down you feel, out of those 9 billion people, there's only you. And there's somebody looking for you to be part of their chosen family. Right? I mean, and that just dawned on me now because I remember thinking, oh, at my lowest points when you're like, oh, if you just disappear, and then you're like, no, I matter to my family. But if I didn't have that family, I'm thinking, because there would be times where, envy or something can be.
Yes.
I don't even know if I even have that. Probably have it. You look and you're like, oh, wouldn't that be? And then I'm thinking, no, I want to be me. I don't
Yeah.
want what they have. Not in that way, right? In that envious way that some people, it's like, okay, maybe I want what a family or this, but I don't want theirs and I want mine. And if I try to be like them, who's going to be like me? You know what I mean? I feel like it's all of that.
Right.
It's like, no, you have to be. So even when you're at your lowest, and there's
Yes.
nothing wrong for asking for help, nothing wrong for asking for help. There are people that want to help you, right? Professionals, lay
Yeah.
people, people who don't know what they're talking about but just want to build you up, people that are willing to listen to you, sit with you, cry with
It's,
you.
people think it's weakness to ask for help, but you're not weak. You're actually strong when you get the courage to say, hey, I need some help. That's admirable. So I just wanted to say that because some people, they've been taught in their family of origin, right? That, oh, you failed if you need help. No, we all need help at some time in our life.
We all need help. And I know that is something that I need to work on. I like to ask for help when I'm desperate. And when I think about it, I probably wouldn't get to that desperate stage if I would have asked for help before, and
Yes.
probably wouldn't have needed so much help. But that's something that I'm working on. And that's the other thing. Do you still consider yourself a work in progress? I mean, we're
I
still always.
I do. And I love that. I mean, I feel like perfect people are already transitioned to another realm. And one of my mentors, she says to celebrate your flaws. And she said, and if you're going to make a mistake, make it a really good one. She said,
I hear you.
F up really bad.
Yeah, that kind of tends to be me when I go bad. It's like, wow, okay, how did I get there? But yeah, okay, so wow, okay, so much inspiration already. Okay, it's not just, and here's the thing, you came from a family, educated people, doctor, teacher, Black Panther, art activist, writer, editor, and you still found yourself doing probably what you never thought you were going to do, the
Yeah.
drugs part. And it
Yes.
got to the point where it was bad. So just to say, it doesn't matter where you come from. It matters what you do with whatever
Yeah.
you have and turn it around. So once you did that, when did you make your first book, and what was that first book about?
My very first book was called The Sacred Door, A Spiritual Guide to Power Living. And it was really, it's a self-help book. It's a healing book, nonfiction, but it was really about my walk as an intuitive because I started to see the other thing that happened when I was really young. And that may have even been part of the catalyst for me, not for me using drugs, because I didn't understand the gift that I had been given and I didn't have a cultural reference for who I was, right? I didn't understand it. And so I wrote that book for other people who have the gift, who have intuitive powers. And we all have intuition. I don't care who you are. You may not be Sylvia Brown or John Edwards, but we all have intuition if we learn to listen to it. So the other thing that I taught and teach in that book, The Sacred Door, was how to tap into your intuition and how to develop it. So that was the very first book. And the story is, and it's funny, I've told the story a few times over the last few months with the book signings, but I was working at, I had gotten a very good job, got my life together, right? Taking care of my daughter. I had a partner, a really great partner in my life. And I had this good paying job, but I knew something was missing. And I really hated the job. I mean, it was just politics and backstabbing and ugliness. And I didn't want to be there, but I had to pay my rent. And so one day I remember saying to myself, and I heard Spirit kept saying, write the book, write the book. And I was like, but I can't, I don't have time. And I'm tired when I get home and I have to cook and wash and, all the things that you do. So one day I said, I'm going to write this book. And my partner's like, just stay home. I'll cover us. I want you to write the book. And I was like, okay, are you sure? Are you sure? They're like, yeah, we're going to be fine. And so I stayed home. I quit the job and I wrote the book. And this is why we have to be obedient to Spirit. Because 6 months after I wrote the book, literally, this is a true story. This is the beginning of self-publishing. And we put the book on the internet, put up a link, where to buy it. And I get a call from a motion picture studio, one of the largest in the world. And this was the beginning again of reality TV. And they said, we're doing this reality show. We saw your book online and we want to fly you in for an audition. I thought it was a joke. I hung up on the woman. I said, my friends are playing. They know I'm busy. I'm working 12 jobs. I quit my main one to write
Child,
a book.
please. Click.
And this woman, thank God, she called me back. And she was like, this is Amy. This is not a joke. And I'm really calling you from, and I'll say the name of the studio was Universal Pictures. And she said, we want to talk to you. And so I was like, okay, this is real. Like, this is really real. And then that old sickness kicked in, right? I call it that black tax, that, and that low self-esteem, because I was still healing back then. And I thought, why do they want me? I'm 42. I'm not a size 2. Why would they could get Ian Levinzant. They could get this one. And I remember saying this to my partner and then to my guru, my teacher. And he said, they chose you. God, and it's like what you said earlier in the show, they chose your imprint. And this is your destiny. And you need to do this. So I went for the audition. And I did. There's this comedian named Joan Rivers who I used to love because she just had so much right. She was just fire to me. And she used to say, walk in the room talking. So I walked in the room. Hi, everybody. My name is Love. And I was just talking, and about 6 weeks later, because I thought I didn't get it and I had let it go. But about 6 weeks later, Adrienne, they called and they said, we chose you. And here I am. I'm going to be on primetime television in between The Apprentice and The Fear Factor for this national TV show that ended up getting picked up in the UK. So we went to England, and we went to London and Manchester. It went to Canada. It went to Africa. It ended up going all over the world. So that opened the door to everything else that I was to do. And then I wrote the second book and the third book and so on and so on. And now we're at this. I just wrote the 9th book, as you know.
Oh my
And
gosh, but wait a minute. What was the name of the show? Can we still find it somewhere
oh,
on YouTube or something?
yeah, it's on Hulu. It's called Mad House. And it
I
was a show.
heard that. I just never watched it. What?
Yes, it was a show about diversity and cultural diversity. And they brought people who had like literally never been out of their hometown together with these 5 alts who lived like alternative lifestyles. Me, a priestess. They brought this other guy who was a naturist, like he lived being naked all of the time. They had a vampire. They had this other woman who was a witch. And so we did the show, and we had to put them through trials and tests to see how much they could expand, to recognize other people's cultures, and to see the world in its beautiful richness. And then they picked one winner who won $100,000. So it was something else. Yeah, something to tell.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Okay, so viewers, listeners, we have to on Hulu, Mad House. Okay, I'm definitely looking it up. We on also season 1. How many seasons?
It was just one season that came out,
Okay.
but because it went to those other countries, we had millions of people watch the show because that
Oh
one
yeah.
got, yeah.
Okay, so now you mentioned that so we hopped over a period in your life because you said they picked you because you were a priestess. When and how did you become a priestess? What is a priestess?
Ooh, that was an incredible journey. Well, one of the things that I talked about being a seeker and growing up in the church, in my father's church, him being very conservative, but also very liberal in his own ways. But I asked him the question when I was really young. I said, Dad, how come Jesus only looks like one race of people? And I don't know about you, but in my home, you didn't ask questions about Jesus. Jesus is, that's it, end of story.
You didn't have a black Jesus painting. You had that traditional painting
Uh-uh.
with the white robe, the beard, looking up with the light
No.
coming down on the light. Okay,
Uh-uh.
no black Jesus. Okay,
Right.
your father was Black Panther, but I thought maybe you had black Jesus.
My daddy didn't know about that. And bless his heart. He was,
Yeah.
yes. And so I asked him that question. He told me to shut up. And of course I shut up because I wanted to keep my lips. But I went on church. But I was like, I was going to answer my question. And so I started searching and reading everything I could. about religion and spirituality and the history of Jesus Christ. And that I found this book called The Historical Origin of Christianity by Walter Williams. And it changed my whole life. And then I got another book called Tapping the Power Within by New York Times bestselling author Iyanla Vanzant. This was her very first book. And in this book, she started talking about hearing and seeing spirits. And I had never read a book by a Black woman who talked about hearing and seeing spirits. And she said she was a priestess. And I was like, a priestess? And I was like, what is this? What is this priestess thing? And she practiced this tradition of the Yoruba people from Nigeria, from Ile-Ife, Nigeria, West Africa. And I started researching that. And when I researched that, I found my guru, Oloye Ifa Karade, in his book, The Handbook of Yoruba Religious Concepts. And my crazy butt, I reached out to him. He used to have, in the old days, in this edition of his book, he used to have his phone number to the temple in the back of the book. And I called the number. And his wife answered the phone. And thus began a whole nother journey. Because I worked with him for about 3 years. And 3 years later, he came in. I flew him into my town where I was living. And he started to train me and teach me. And I started to apprentice. And I've been with him ever since. 24 years, I've been a priestess, a Yoruba priestess of Yemaja and an Ifa priestess.
Oh, wow. Now,
Yes.
do you know if that's where you come from? Did you do a DNA test? Does it matter?
I did. It doesn't matter. Ifa is universal. Anyone of any race, or background can practice Ifa. But I did find out that my ancestors were from Nigeria. So it resonated heavily
Wow.
with me. Yes.
Absolutely. That's powerful and
Yeah.
beautiful. So, as a priestess, what's been your most memorable experience? Like, what do you do? How do you help other people in this role?
Yes. Well, one of the things, because remember, from a kid, I'm an organizer. So I've always been a person that produced conferences and summits. And one of my mentors, my literary mentors, Dr. Haki Matabuti, who founded Third World Press, which is the oldest Black-owned
Know
publishing,
that?
right?
Yeah.
Published Sonia Sanchez and many other luminaries. But anyway, he told me, he said, TaShia, build institutions. And I never forgot that. And I said, well, why? He said, because institutions far outlast the people who start them. He said, you can, do work. He said, but when you build an institution, like you have Black women in Europe, you have your healing practice, all of the work that you do, those things will far outlast us. When we're gone, people will still be doing the work that you're doing, that I'm doing. And so I started Ile Ori Agbe Egun Yoruba Ifa Temple. And I started in Colorado in 2000. And this is our 24th year. For the first 5 years, my Oluo would come and, mentor me and guide me and supervise me. And I did every job in the temple so I could learn. And then one day he said, it's time for you to take it. And so I started doing it and doing the initiations and the rituals, the healing rituals. So now I have initiated 197 priests to the religion. And we opened it up to 16 cities across the US and 4 countries. So we've had members in Paris, in Lebanon, in London, South Africa, Ghana, and now I have juniors, junior priests who work under me, and they do the work, because now I feel like at this age it's my time. And if you can't do something with 197 priests, I feel like
Okay.
right.
That's remarkable. So, talk about building an institution. That's going to live on forever.
Yes.
Wow. Whew. Okay. So, whew, I know you organize trips. You say you're organized. I'm just like so impressed. Are you taking people to Nigeria, or do you travel alone to have your break? How much time do you need alone? It's a lot of, you're like, how do you maintain your aura, your space, your energy, keeping your cup full?
Definitely my family really helps me. They keep me laughing. We do fun stuff. We listen to comedy. I have some great friends. I have grandchildren now. I have 4 grandsons. Yes. So I spend time with,
Congratulations. Amazing. From one daughter, you got 4 grandchildren.
yes.
Woo! And sons, you're gonna be great grandmother. You know sons produce. They
Yes.
will produce. Wow. Can you imagine you have well, of course you can imagine, but did you ever think you'd have 4 grandchildren?
I did not, because I remember when she was having those babies, I was like, okay, now 2 is enough. And next thing I know, the third one snuck up. But they are beautiful. I mean, they are all good boys. One of them's in college. He has a 4.0 GPA. The second one's just gotten accepted to a college in Italy. And they run track, and they're good boys because they have good parents, a mother and a father who are really present for them. And so and I know that Ifa is so much part of the reason that I have all of that. But my family, definitely keeps me grounded, and I still do a lot of community work. My partner has an organization called the Homeless Goddess Project. So I do work with that project, and we work with unhoused women and their families. And then, so that also gives me a lot of joy. It's work, but it's also an escape because it makes me feel good inside. And
That's such
then,
important work. That's so
yeah,
important work. It's hard being on the street. I can't imagine, but for women are so vulnerable on the
right.
street. And if we're still in our reproductive years, not having sanitary items and things that you need, and the
Yes,
privacy to take care of that kind of business. And so you're really doing good work. I
yes,
want to ask you, because I've had you over an hour. I want to ask you, what's the difference between, I don't want to say what's the difference, but where have you seen you develop? Or why was there a second book and a third and up to 9? What
yes.
has been the progression? Am I making myself clear with that? What
Yeah.
I mean?
Well,
Okay.
this is of course is the newest book. It's called The
The
Seer.
Seer, Legacy of Stone and Spirit, and the cover is beautiful. We'll definitely have a link to that. Tell me who did the artwork too. It's beautiful. Okay.
Yes. And then this book, this is second to the last. This is Any Heart Open.
Love that too. Is that fiction, or are all of these
Yes.
nonfiction?
Just these two, I have 4 novels, and all the rest are nonfiction books. But your question was, why did I write more than one book, and how did I get the inspiration for the other books? The novels, Adrian in particular, are all centered around a social justice cause that I felt passionate about, sometimes angry or outraged about. And I channeled that energy through my creativity, because you asked also, how do I balance it? So writing is what heals me. It has always healed me since age 7 when I wrote that first poem. And so I prayed for a publisher. Noble Trinity Media is my publisher. And I prayed for a publisher that would understand and get, what these books are all about. So anyway, the first book is about the misuse of police power. So I write about the murder of this Black boy, the beating of this Black boy, and murder of other Black boys. And I frame the whole story around ethnic healing, because this woman, I don't want to tell you too much, y'all gonna have to read it. And the book is called The Bones Do Talk. And this woman, she's a civil rights activist like me, but she finds out that she has white relatives because her mother was keeping a secret from her. So anyway, you have to read the book to get everything in between. But
Juicy, juicy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, she heals her family, and she heals a age-old rift between her white and her Black relatives that happened because of racial difference. And she does this in the process of doing her own work. So that's one book. Then The Sheep and the Wolves is a story about the opioid crisis in America. And really, it's global. So fentanyl and how it's killing so many kids and people, period, and destroying families. So I framed that story around the opioid crisis. And then Any Heart Open, the one that I showed you just a minute ago, is about religious extremism and in the ways that it kills and destroys as well and divides us as a humanity. And so in this book, you really learn how we are more alike than different. No matter what race we are, no matter what our identity is, we all want to be loved. We all want to feel safe. And for us to start to search for the similarities in each other versus the differences. So I talk about that in Any Heart Open. And then in The Seer, this is a story about human trafficking, and particularly the trafficking of Black girls and other girls of color, because they are among the top girls being trafficked. And now in America, they have this thing called trap houses, where they are kidnapping young Black women and making them become sex slaves in these houses. And these are like, sometimes they're cartels, sometimes they're getting, drug dealers, different stuff like that. And so I wrote about that movement and what we can all do to help stop, these girls from being, imprisoned and damaged, sometimes killed and destroyed. So
Oh
that's
gosh.
stories. Yeah.
No, so powerful because I am a member of I'm actually on the human rights team of the FALCO, Federation of Women's Clubs Overseas, and I had my ex, he's on the front lines of fighting this, write an article about human trafficking. He's been doing it in Asia. He started when it was the fall of the Soviet Union, and he was working in catching people who were trading in endangered species, and then found out those were the same people who were selling women. And has
Oh,
been working all that, since like 1996. And he just wrote an article, and the statistics are um, stammering. Is that the word? Because it's,
yes.
how many get stolen, trapped, tricked,
Oh my God.
so many that pay to get imprisoned, not willingly, of course, but you get fooled thinking you're doing this and something, and then you're really ending up doing something else. So human trafficking, I'm so proud of you for
Well, I
touching on
want
that in that book
I
because
would love,
it's so prevalent. I'll give you it's so prevalent. It's so prevalent, and we have
yeah,
to be aware and
yeah,
keep our eyes open because we might be seeing something that we don't know about, or
yeah,
when you just know something's not right. We have to be aware, and it does happen in our community. Black people are doing it to Black people.
yeah,
Asian people are doing it to Asian people.
yes.
European women are doing. European women are getting trafficked by European men. So it's not as if you would think that, oh, I wouldn't do that too. That could be my little sister. No, these people that are involved in human trafficking don't care. Just like
Yes.
every book that you wrote about, what a fantastic, and none of these problems have gone away. Okay, it was crack one time, this fentanyl, it's still all of these problems in these marginalized communities. So thank you for writing it in a way that people will read about it, understand, and then hopefully get as outraged as you, right?
Yes.
It want to do something. So
Yes.
the book, The Seer, that's brand new, hot off the press.
Brand new, hot off the press. And what was the blessing with the team that is working with me and my publisher, Nova Trinity Media, much, much love to you. And this book was published by Rainmaker Press. But The Seer made number one literally 7 days after it came out. It hit number one. And this is very, very hard to do. And we ranked top 10 in multiple genres for this book. And people are just loving it across the nation. If you're watching Black Women in Europe today, I hope y'all will please go get a copy of this tell a friend, and I would love to come, and tell this story and share this story. I perform it. I perform an
Do
excerpt,
you?
and it's
Okay.
for the big screen. That's the next thing we're working on now. I'm hoping I'm going to sign with an agent who is going to help get this made into a movie, because the screenplay's written, it's ready to go. And so that's my goal with this, is for it to be a movie. So
That'd
it's
be a
already,
movie. Wow,
yes,
maybe your agent can get in touch with the Obamas. I don't know if they still have their Netflix deal. We get it on Netflix. Um,
yes,
get in touch with Tyler Perry. He's got his
yes,
own studio. I mean, there are people that want to tell your story, but I don't care who does it as long as it
yes.
gets out there and the script is ready. Wow, you know what? I hate to say goodbye. I'm thinking we're going to have to do a part two with you. Hopefully, you will be able to come back because there's still some things I want to talk to you about. But you've given me so much now, and I want to keep it bite-sized and chunky because you know people's
Oh,
attention spans. People are busy, so because you got a
yeah.
lot, you gave a lot for people to listen to digest. But the main thing I want listeners to know, we're going to have the link to your latest book, all of your books, but also to where maybe someone, if they're in the area, can come to the temple. I don't know. Do you do the healing practices there, the offerings
We do.
that you provide? Okay.
Yes.
And that's
And
a physical location, or is it
yes,
online?
it's I Teach Love Institute. And if they go to www.iteachloveinstitute.com, they can find out full information about the temple. And then, of course, my website is official TaShiaAsanti.com. And I travel all over the world to do my work. And so I'm always willing to come and do workshops and teach. And there is I'm hoping that I'm going to get to come. I don't know if I'll be in your country, but I'm going to come to the UK, and we're working on something now. So I have to keep you posted on that, because I'm hoping I can meet you there, or we can fly you there or something. So that we,
Absolutely. Keep me posted. And you put me in touch with a wonderful woman that's working with an organization.
yes,
We haven't talked, but I think, yeah, I put her on my power list or something because that sister was
ladies,
doing amazing work with Pride, with the Pride.
yes,
She was doing amazing work, so she made the power list. So I don't know. I can't imagine you're going to go to the UK and not see her. But if y'all hook up, I want to be in the middle of one of those hugs for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I
I
thank
love
you
you,
for
sister.
having. You are such an awesome flower bouquet of my life, and I wish you continued blessings in everything that you do. And I'm so glad we got to connect, and I look forward to having you on my show next time. I want to learn more about all of the things that are going on with you, and as well as the work that you're doing in that part of the world. So thank you for having me.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed that
And
episode
sit
from
down.
season 4, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, be well.
Shut up and sit down. Romantic, isn't it? Shut up and sit down.